Alright, so this is my high signature attack battery damage build with Black Panther, with kind of a secondary focus in Valor, but honestly, I think I would prefer the second stat to kind of be focused more in resilience, but I haven't really gotten a lucky enough to where I have the stats work it out with might and resilience on it. Valor I like a lot to have as a secondary on all my heroes because it makes your heroics do more damage, but with this specific build with Black Panther, I'm not really worried too much about the heroics, and I'm more worried about how much melee damage I'm doing, and obviously melee damage requires you being up close and personal to enemies, so a higher defensive stat coming out of resilience would be a lot better in my opinion, but I haven't really found the right pieces of gear for that yet, so the secondary stat for this is Valor, which still isn't a bad thing, although as a result, Black Panther is kind of the only one. I wouldn't say I can't solo the Super Adaptoid with him because I've gotten extremely close, but when it comes to also recording, trying to kill the Super Adaptoid solo, it's a lot more luck involved with what moves she decides to do, because especially with Black Panther with this high melee build, when she decides to split up, it becomes incredibly difficult to finish her off, especially so when you have a lower defensive stat like I do here, but I'll go over all the pieces now. So we'll start with the melee piece. So we'll go ahead and start with the melee piece. So the main battery effect that we're getting off right here is going to be Sonic from the signature attacks, and then we have also Cosmic on the range, but that's honestly not where we're getting the full battery from. We're getting the full battery from the melee critical attacks from a Vibranium payload, but we'll start with the melee. So you mainly want to have Sonic on the signature attacks, which this is what it usually comes in. I think it's always going to come with light combo and then a secondary, whether it's power attacks, heavy combo finishers, or signature attacks. So you're going to want the light combo with the signature attacks deal Sonic damage. The other stats on this don't really matter too much. You know, he's sending the Sonic conduit when there's a active Vibranium status on a defeated enemy, which, you know, is good. And as you can see right here, you know, it's might and precision. You know, this would be better, obviously, as you can see, but as you can see as well, it's a heavy combo finishers and melee power attacks deal Sonic, which is not what we want. Also, the attacks while receiving Sonic conduit, attacks made that are infused with any status attacks effects deal 15% more damage. This is more of a piece that I would want, but unfortunately, I only have it in the melee power attacks. I don't have it in the signature attacks. So you do want it in the signature attack, as I feel like that's the kind of layout that deals the most damage as far as melee attacks go. So this is the melee piece. When you go to the ranged piece, so these type of ranged pieces you can get for everybody, and I do feel like they are the best pieces in the game. Oh, let me go back real quick because I just remembered. So this obviously is getting from the Discordant, the raid, the elite raid, as you can see. If it says Discordant whatever, it's from the raid or from the Corrupted Vibranium event, and if it has elite in parentheses next to it, that means it's from the elite version, so that's from the raid. This is from the Cosmic event that deals with Monica and stuff like that. There's a very, very low chance to get this from the event itself, like the mission, not the event, I should say the mission. So there's a low chance to get it from the mission itself. You have to be pretty lucky, but you can get it from the Cosmic Threat event whenever it comes back around, when it lasts for the 2-week period. So it's less about the ranged attacks dealing Cosmic, and it's much more about ranged critical attacks having a chance to not only grant a damage buff, but it also has a chance of granting a Tachyon Surge. So if you're able to get the damage buff and the Tachyon Surge procced with the ranged attack before you go in with the melee attacks, it will help a great deal. So obviously this also has might on it, along with intensity and precision, which is fine, but the main thing you want on it is might. So the defensive piece now, you also get from the elite raid. So this, it really isn't anything too serious. The main thing about it is really the stats for me, and the recovery beads having an 18% chance to intercept incoming damage is nice, and then the decreasing incoming damage by 5% per status effect is also nice, you know. But the main thing on it is the stats, so I do sometimes switch between these two. This is definitely better for damage because, as you can see, inflicts 25% additional damage to enemies afflicted by an active vibranium status, which, and obviously look at my stats now. My stats did go up. Unfortunately, the defense did not go up, though, so that was like the one thing. Like, having a defense of 900, I consider that to be extremely low. The only plus with Black Panther is that you can take basically any defensive stat you have with Black Panther and maybe add like 200 to 300 to it in actuality, because the kit that is built into Black Panther inherently deals with defense. Black Panther is a very defensive, well-built character, so you don't necessarily have to worry about it as much. But 900 is still very low, which is why I usually, for comfortability sakes, I like to have a higher defensive stat. So that's why I have this piece, and this is from the Elite Raid. So now for the heroic piece. So we have Legacy of the Storm. Now, honestly, this really is about the stats as well. There's nothing too serious. I mean, defeating an enemy, having a chance to grant a Tachyon Surge buff, obviously that helps when you're dealing with mobs and stuff like that, as well as the 18% increased heroic regeneration for the ultimate. That obviously helps as well, but the main thing that I'm keeping in mind when I see this is the stats. Now, I believe it is that one. Yeah, so it's this one. That would be overall better, but I would prefer to have a higher heroic stat, and it also brings my might down a little bit because Valor also helps with might, I believe, a little bit. So this would obviously be better because it increases the damage dealt with any sonic attack by 25%, but I prefer to have this on because it has a higher stat and it helps the ultimate, so it helps Boss Chosen to get back. So this piece in particular, you get from the Cosmic Threat event as well. It's the heroic piece. It's very similar for everybody, and that second perk, the Potentiator perk, has a chance of being basically any status effect, I believe, maybe minus Sonic and Vibranium. But yeah, you can get that type of perk and gear with any hero from the Cosmic Threat. So now we'll move on to the minor artifacts. This is the main thing. So obviously you want to have minor might ISOs as well. So you want triple stats on the minor ISOs because the double stats don't scale as well once they get to 165. So you do want triple stat might ISOs. I keep on trying to catch myself because I almost say Valor because that's what I have for basically everybody else. But for Black Panther, you do want might for this build. So you want a triple might ISO. The perk for increasing damage from power attacks, that obviously helps Pounce. That's cool. I'm almost positive you could get a similar perk where it increases the signature attacks. I just haven't gotten lucky enough to get that type of perk on a might ISO. So yeah, if you could get that perk instead of power attacks, having it be signature attacks, that will obviously help. And then I could, put this secondary ISO on, but see how it barely did anything for my might stat. And then we really, really, really want the Vibranium payload from the minor ISO right here. Instead of having to, you could do the battery damage from the Cosmic, from the ranged and the Sonic, but having melee critical attacks having a chance of activating the Vibranium payload is so much more efficient, and it calls for a way more comfier build. So you can get this minor ISO from the raid as well. I believe I got this one specifically though from the Corrupted Vibranium event whenever it was around. I think you have a lot better chance of getting these types of ISOs from the Corrupted Vibranium event whenever it comes around. And then the triple stat ISOs of any kind, whether it's might, whether it's Valor, what have you, your best chance of getting them are from the faction vendors. So just make sure to check the Shield and the Inhuman faction vendor daily, because they will always have a daily epic minor ISO in there. So just make sure to check those. And then as far as the major artifact goes for everybody, I always do the Nornstone of Lethal Will, because this, what it's going to do, you could do the Tactagon, which is going to increase your stats, but the main thing with this is the effect for the damage boost, and having the ability to activate an extra damage boost, especially if you're activating it on top of the Tachyon Surge and the damage buff. It's just a lot better for it in my opinion. So the major artifact is the Sacred Nornstone of Lethal Will. So now we'll go over the skills configuration. So for the most part, for specialty, I don't think there's anything too serious. It's for the most part your own type of preference. So for me, for support, I prefer to provide energy armor while active for recovery beads, absorbing 20% of the damage from enemy attacks, and then extending the duration of the Kimoyo beads and the recovery beads for allies by 10 seconds. And then for the assault heroic, so I do prefer this middle one with the meteoric impact with the Vibranium spear, I feel like this is more viable now than it was before because of the patch and the heroic upgrades, but I do prefer the middle one myself, but again, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Increases the power of the spear's vortex, allowing it to affect a larger area and destroying enemy projectiles caught in its path. Again, I think I think this entire thing is more your choice than anything else. Like, I don't think it matters that much. For this one, I will say if you're going for as much effective damage as possible, this would be what you want. So it reduces damage taken from enemy attacks who have the mark of Bast by 15%, and it increases damage that they take by 10%. So obviously that helps. I do put on the Adored ones every now and again, just because I think I honestly think it's just because it looks cool. And honestly, at that point, it's whatever you think is better. When I was actually trying to solo the Super Adaptoid, I had the Adored ones on. I did not have Panther's Roar on, which it wasn't going to make that big of a difference, honestly. But still, this would be what you want to deal the most damage. So I would suggest that, but it's still your preference. And then for this one, this one is still your preference. I prefer to do Realm Shift because, again, I think this is just a cool ability and it lets you get to people fast. This might be better in terms of damage, allowing Percussive Blast to be supercharged and deal additional damage, scaling with your Valor, especially if you have a secondary kind of higher stat in Valor like this build calls for that I'm showing right now. But again, I think overall, it's really just your preference with these. I don't think it's too big of a deal with this specific build to have these under the specialty tab, having these skills be anything specific. So now with the Mastery tab, I don't think I really need to explain why some of these are going to be a lot more important to choose for your specialties. So increases attack damage by 10% while performing air melee combos. That is exactly what this whole build is about, essentially. So you definitely 100% want this one equipped, because the signature attack is going to get you in the air, and then when you hold square to do the downward signature attack, that's still an aerial attack. So you absolutely want that configuration. Increases the stun damage of all heavy combo finishers by 20%. This one really isn't as, you can choose whichever one you want. I just chose that one. This one right here, performing a takedown, generates a heroic orb. Again, this one's really your preference with the orbs and stuff. Swap out the dagger thrown in the range combo finisher with a kinetic dagger. Again, that's your choice. Increases the stun damage from kinetic daggers by 15%. That's your choice. Increases the critical attack damage dealt from all daggers by 10%. That's still your choice because we're dealing with daggers. That's not the main focus of this build. So reduces the cost of all intrinsic attacks by 15%. Now, this one's a little more interesting. Honestly, I feel like it's still your personal choice, because I think it's this one, build up a small amount of intrinsic energy on each successful melee attack. I feel like it could be pretty good as well. I just prefer to reduce the cost overall of intrinsic attacks, so that's the one I went with. Increases the damage of all intrinsic attacks by 10%. I feel like that's a no-brainer. You absolutely need this one specifically for this type of build. So you want to increase the damage of all intrinsic attacks by 10%, and then increases the damage dealt by all heavy intrinsic attacks by 10%. Again, that light and increase the stealth. Okay, I was gonna say I did think there was another one. The reason why I don't have this one is because this is just stun damage. I mean, I actually will equip that just to see if there is a difference. I don't think there's gonna be that much of a difference, but you can do either way on this one, I'm gonna say. But considering a lot of the attacks you're gonna do are light attacks, you might as well keep it as consistent as possible and keep it with the light intrinsic attacks. So this one increases the damage of the kinetic burst from percussive blast. That would be the preferred one if we're talking about damage, but I think it's still, again, I've already gone over basically all of the ones that are a necessity. Actually, I lied. This one right here is a necessity. So increases the critical attack damage by 10%, and critical attack chance by 10%, and critical attack damage by 10% while overcharged. So that's absolutely a necessity as well. So make sure you have that one on. And then defeating an enemy while the overcharge buff is active has a 20% chance to drop an intrinsic orb. And I think this is just heroic and regen perk pack as well. So I just do intrinsic so that it helps you get the intrinsic back faster, which is what Black Panther's whole kit is about. So the last tab, as far as the champion perks go, The way I usually, I don't know what I was doing with some of these people, but the philosophy that I truly think is the best is you want to do these two columns first because these deal with defense. So these will boost your defense. This permanently increases defense by 1%. This is going to do willpower, which is also going to affect your defense. I would usually suggest getting these to at least 4. And then I would do this one, which is the critical damage. So, and then at least get that to 4. But those 3 columns, 1, 2, and then 3, I feel like are the best columns to go for first as far as champion skills, though. And then after that, I feel like it's really your preference. But go ahead and comment down below how you prefer to build your Black Panther. And if you enjoyed this video today, feel free to like and subscribe for future Marvel content. And I will leave this video with this build in action against the Super Adaptoid and Maestro. And I appreciate you for watching the video.